All right, welcome back. We are Game 3001 in the winter 2021 semester at George Brown, and it's week 5, part 3 of our broadcast. What we're talking about now is how to display, compute and display our tile cost. And we're here inside of our lab. We're at this part right here. We're starting to display the cost labels. But what we want to do is we want to calculate the costs and display the status labels and everything else as well. So how do we do this? How is that possible? And we're almost there. We're getting closer. So let's go back to where we were. Where we left off, we did this part. Okay, so we said that we wanted to add an offset to the tile so it produces it in the right spot. Cool. Now what I want to do is I want to set the ability for us to enable and disable the labels when I click the little button. So in the bottom here where it says set labels enabled, I'm just going to say m_cost label set enabled is equal to state, whatever that is. Now we're going to have more than one label. That's why I have this little convenience function. And I don't want to access the cost label, which is private. I don't want to expose it outside of this function. It doesn't make sense. Let's make this a const. Let's make it const, right, as an example. And it's asking me to make the entire function const. I'm fine with that too. Right, const. So let's take a look and see how that works. Now, be careful. If we make this const, sometimes IMGUI doesn't like it, right? So, double const, I know. It's not really necessary. In fact, let's undo the last const. Let's undo it. All right. Let's go back into my placing.cpp. And where I want to make that happen is inside of IMGUI. So when I click the checkbox, right, in IMGUI, when I click it so that I can see, I can enable and disable everything. Well, first of all, I want to, when I'm building the labels here, when I'm building the labels, I want to set them disabled. So I want to, when I add labels in place, right, I add my labels inside the add labels method, they're disabled by default. They're disabled by default, which means inside of my tile.cpp, once I add child, I want to say that m_cost label set enabled is equal to false. So up here inside of my tile.cpp, okay? And then what I want to do is, since it's disabled by default, when I go back into my placing and I want to go into my IMGUI portion, which is here up in GUI function, and where I have my isGrid enabled, I also want to disable my labels. I want to disable my labels at the same time, right? So when I set grid enabled, yes, that's nice, but I also want to turn on and turn off my labels. My mSetGrid enabled is a function that's existing here inside of placing.cpp. If I go to that function, go to definition, right, or declaration, you can see that for every tile, then I set the tile disabled or enabled depending on the state. Well, this is a perfect spot to put in if my labels for each tile, so I got to do it for each tile, I want to be able to do the label that is disabled or enabled. So I can say that, hey, tile, for every tile, I want to set label enabled to whatever the state is. So when I enable the tile, so too does my label get enabled. When I disable the tile, so too does my label get disabled. Okay? And let's run it and test it to see if it's okay. So again, running it, set the tile up, and now I should be able to do this. I should be able to turn off and on the tile. Okay. Excellent. This is a good spot to start. I want to continue. I want to add a status label. And the status label of my tile, right, we have a status label that I put in, but we haven't used it yet. I want to put the status label in my tile into add labels. And my status label is going to be basically show, is it on the open list, the closed list? Is it even accessed? Is it passable, impassable. I want to give a status to my tile so I can inspect it and so I can see it visually on the screen. It's going to help me, right? So again, just like before, I want to instantiate it here. I want to say m underscore status label is equal to a new label, which is going to be, maybe I'll print it, it'll just look like that, like a dash or a dash dash as a good example. And then what I want to do is I want to make it consoleless. Again, this is just you can choose any font you want. You can enable fonts later on. Same size, 12, right? But they're going to be on top of each other in a second. M underscore status label. I want to get transform position, and I want to set the position equal to my get transform position plus my offset, right? Because my offset is something I want to add, but I need to actually push this down, and I want to pull this up because they're on top of each other right now, right? And then I want to get my parents, and I want to add child, m underscore status label, and I want to set my status label by default to enabled is false, and then inside of my set labels enabled, I'm going to say status label, right, set enabled to the same status as my other label. So that's why I have this function, because it'll do both labels at the same time. This does both labels. I separated them because just because I'm adding them doesn't mean that they're enabled or disabled, right? These are different, there's different reasons for being. But these two are going to appear the exact same position, and I can't have that. That means they're both on top of each other. I want to move this label up, and I want to move this label down. So I can add another plus here, where I can say that after my offset, I want to need a new GLM vec2 object where I don't add anything to the x-axis, but I add something to the y-axis, something like a minus. I'm just putting a value here right now. Let's say minus 6.0f. Okay, you have to play with this value, whatever it makes sense for you. And then at the same time, what I'm going to do, this is my position for specifically for this label, and this is going to be plus 6. So in other words, minus 6 means my 99 is going to be above the middle, and plus 6 is going to be my dash dash is going to be below the middle of my label. Okay, so this is what add labels and set labels enables looks like now. No multiplication overload for vec2. Yes, there is. Do I need the plus symbol? Yeah, I do. The plus symbol, plus 6 and minus 6. Yeah, I need that. The plus 6, this plus symbol here, you mean? No, I don't. But minus 6 I need. I just put the plus symbol there so you can see what I'm doing. All right, this is how it should be. All right, let's see how this looks now if I render it. So I'm going to run it, and let's run this through. And if I go to this and I click my grid, then I'm going to see this. So the 99 is above my status, like so. That's what I want. Why is this? Because right now there's no status, right? I don't have a status for this tile, this tile, this tile. They're all the same. There's no, I'm not layering anything on top of them, right? Maybe later on we're going to put some kind of nice graphic on top of these things, load a graphic, and then it's going to look nice, right? If you don't see your status, it means you haven't added it to the grid. So what that means is it looks like this. That's what you need. Okay, so now that I have this, right, this is displaying my status. Let's put this up on GitHub so you have what I have, okay? So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to Home, and I'm going to go to Changes, and I'm going to say displayed cost and status labels with each tile. That's what I'm doing. I'm at All, Home, Sync, and Push. So you should have those examples now online. All right, that's up on our example for Lab 4. I'm trying to go slow So you have the, kind of the full gamut of how this works. Okay, now that I can display stuff, right? I want to move my target. I want to be able to start calculating my target. And I want to move my target. I want to snap it into my grid. Because right now my target, if you notice, if I run it, my target looks like it's like in the middle, but it's not really on grid. It's like here. And every object from now on that I put in should be snapped to grid, right? It should be using grid coordinates, not world coordinates. Okay, hear what I just said. Grid coordinates. Grid coordinates. How do I do that? That means I don't care so much about my world coordinates necessarily for calculations. I care about my grid coordinates. Okay. So what's next steps? How do I do that, right? Well, let's go back to the play scene and inspect. I added the, in my start method, I have the target. But right now, the position of the target is some 400 and 300. How the heck do I calculate which grid space it's going to be on, right? I want to be able to add my grid space. I want to use my grid space as a location, and my grid space is going to kind of come back with a number, right? How do I do that? Okay, there's a couple of approaches we can use, right? So grid size, Y grid size, yeah, we could do that. But let's think about this. We already have some mechanisms in place. We have some convenience functions. Let's make some more convenience functions, right? So remember that I already have get tile, right? So get tile, let's just explore get tile for a second. I can say that m underscore get tile, and I want to put in, let's suppose I want to put my target at 15 and 11 on the tile, on the grid. Get tile says, hey, I want to return the tile, right? I'm returning a tile. The tile has a physical position, my friends, right? On the grid, but there's a bit of an offset, a problem with the offset again, right? And I'm just going to, just for now, I'm just going to grab this offset that we kind of have further down. We just had this offset that I created, right? In the, where is it? In the grid. I think I put it in the tile itself. This offset number right here is what I want. Okay, I'm duplicating. Guys, whenever I duplicate, in your mind, I want you to think, how we need to not duplicate. We need to figure a way of not repeating myself. I'm repeating myself. If I repeat myself, there's got to be a better way. In your mind, always think that. Okay, but for now, we don't care. We want to make it work. So I'm going to go in here inside of my target, before my target, and put in my offset. Something that looks like this. Offset is equal to JLN-vec2, blah, blah, blah. We're going to need this offset. Why? Because I'm going to say that my get tile is going to return a tile, and then I can immediately go and say get transform, right? Because it's a transform, right? Get transform. I can do that. Get transform position. Get transform position plus my offset, right? I can do that. Can I not? Because m get tile, right, returns a tile reference. If I give it a tile like 1511, it's going to give me a tile. Like it's going to give me a reference to a tile object. The tile object has a world space position, get transform position, but it's the top left corner, and I need to offset it so that my target is in the middle. All right, that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so that is what I need to do. Are you with me? Do you understand what I'm doing here? Neil says, make it a member variable for offset. Yes, I could. That's a very good idea. But it's only going to be a member variable for my play scene. What about for my tile? Those are two different classes, right? So think about that, right? You can make it a macro as well. Or here's another thing you can do. You could put it in my config, right? So in my, I'm saying there's lots of solutions here. For example, if I go into my config file, I got all these configs, right? Screen width, screen height, column row, tile cost, tile size, all this stuff. And what I could do is I could make a static constant that's inside of my config and just call it config, offset, kind of thing. I can do that. And then I can just call it whenever I want to. So this is a cheesy way, a terrible way of doing it if I did it here. The best way to do it is think about making it a class, some kind of new class that I got to use. All right, that's better. But for now, this is definitely a way of doing it. You can put it in here, but let's leave it the way it is. We just want to make it work right now. Remember the first part, what I always tell you to do is make it work and then fix it. Then refactor. Make it work, then refactor. All right, let's see if this even works. So I'm saying, hey, let's get a reference to, my columns, 15 columns across, 11 column down, which means in my grid, I want to go here, 15 columns, and then I want to go to right here on the 11th column, right here. This is where I want my target to be, right? So you can imagine my target is going to be there. That's what I want it to be, okay? That's where I want to position it. Can we position our object so it looks exactly like this, not in the middle? Does it work? Let's go back and run this and see what happens. So if I run it, does it move where I'm telling it to go? So yeah, it's down here now. Let's see what it looks like on the grid. Perfect. By the way, whenever you're doing assignment 2, you want to make objects about 40 by 40, right? All your tiles should be 40 by 40. This way, there's a one-to-one mapping, because that's what our tiles are going to be 40 by 40 right now. So you might as well, all your graphics and everything else you're going to put in on this thing should be 40 by 40. But notice how it's right on the grid. It's not off the grid, it's on the grid. Okay, this is good. This is a good thing. But we have another problem. We have another problem. What if I want to keep track? What if later on I want to read the grid position, right? I want to read the grid position. For example, I want to start computing my tile costs from wherever the target position is, right? I want to from my target position, and I want to read it, for each of the tiles, right? So I want to make a new function to do this when I compute my tile costs, and let's call it compute tile costs. That's what I want to do, right? So again, going back to my placing.h, let's make a brand new function, right? That's what I want. And my brand new function is going to be called compute tile costs. And I'm going to put it inside of my pathfinding. It's not a convenience function. I need to do it. So this is going to be up here. Void m_ compute tile costs. Now, the tile costs I'm going to compute right now, my first iteration of this function is going to be using Euclidean distance, which means from the tile to my target in a direct line of sight. Okay, this is the Euclidean heuristic. All right, I'm not even caring about Manhattan distance right now. Just the target, the distance between my one object and the other. Okay, let's go to. I want to generate my declaration. So generate implementation for this. Here it is. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to go into every tile. For every tile like this, for every tile in the grid, hey, I can even steal this little piece of code right here in set grid enabled, right? I want to go from, I want to go from every tile in the grid. I don't care about doing this, but for every tile in the grid, what I want to say is I want to calculate the distance. Let's make a distance method. Here's my distance, and I'm going to use my distance formula that I have in my util. So util, I have a distance formula. My distance takes two vectors, vector A and vector B. Right now, I want to get my target's position. So I want to get my target, m_p target, right? And I want to get my get transform dot position. I want to get the position of my target as the one vector, and the other vector is I want to get my position of the tile. So tile, and I want to get transform dot position. All right, is this what I want? This is going to give me a distance in pixels, my friends, a distance in pixels. And what I want to do is if I set the tile cost, so I want to say, hey, tile, let's set the tile cost to the distance. I'm just breaking it down over 2 lines here. You can actually put all this. You can put all this inside of here if you want. But I'm not doing that. I just want to talk about this. So this is what I want to do. I want to set the tile cost for each tile, right, to the distance in pixels. This is wrong, right? We know this is wrong. So what we want now is we need to, our set tile cost doesn't really do anything, right? So if I go to definition for set tile cost, it just does this. Remember I said to do, display the cost label? Well, I need to update this so that it displays the cost in my label. I have to update my label, right? So let's try a very simple test. It's going to look terrible. m_cost label. And I have, each label has a set text method that I added in. And I can just, kind of pass in the cost as a string. So cost. And if I say toString, you can see that it passes the cost as a string. And this, my friends, is going to look horrendous. Horrendous. Because it's going to be massive. The cost is going to be in pixels. And it's going to be big. I'm not going to be able to see what it says. Bad things. Well, let's see what I get. Okay, let's see what I get. Can I get a cost first? So again, going back to my previous thing so you can see everything. Here's the first thing. I made a compute tile cost method. I need to call this compute tile cost method. And I'm going to call this in underneath my, so I build my grid, right? I set up my target, and then I compute the tile costs. m_compute tile costs. I can't do compute tile costs before my target's been created. I need to have a target created first before I can compute the costs of each tile to the target. Okay. So this is the order. So build grid, move the target where you want it to inside the grid, compute tile costs. And when I compute my tile costs, I'm going to get the distance for each tile. That's what this little thing is. It's a ranged for loop. For each tile in my for loop, I'm going to get the distance. I'm going to use the util distance method to get the distance from the target position to the tile's position in world space, which is actually wrong, right? Because guess what I need again? An offset. This is from the middle of my position. This is not in the middle of my position. I need that offset. Guys, we're using that offset again and again and again. It's killing me, right? And it's probably killing you too. I need this auto offset thing, which I'm going to use down in here. And so we can get a more accurate measurement of distance, right? So we'll put the offset up here. So it only calculates once. Again, lots of reasons why to make this, like Neil said, maybe a, class, kind of variable, that kind of stuff, something that we're going to keep track of as a convenience, because we can make this part of our config or util, something, right, where we can call offset on it, and we don't have to do this every single time. Okay. And what I want is the distance from the target to the position plus the offset, right? Because can't forget the offset, because if I forget the offset, then we're going to be off. We're going to be in the top left corner as opposed to the middle again, right? And this is inaccurate anyway, as you're going to see in a second. So let's take a look and see what this looks like as a middle step. So I run it, and then when we do it, yeah, I'll be right there in a second, Dylan. Let me just see what this looks like first. So, oh man, what the heck? X string. What are we doing here? Why is it looking so terrible? It's giving me back to my grid, and yarg. I can't set the tile cost. What's going on here? Something is wrong, right? You got a bunch of numbers. Good. That's how it should be. I did it, right? I got broke. That's what it did. It's terribly gross, yeah. And that's why it's not good. It doesn't make sense. But what I need to do here is, again, if I compute the tile costs, right, which is really, not what I really want anyway, right? I'm going to try and add the offset to the position, right? That's what I want to do. Add the offset to the target position. Actually, it shouldn't be. Yeah, it is the target. And then I'm getting an error anyway, but really what we're going to get is a massive thing. And I'm setting the tile cost to the distance being a float. This distance is cool, and I'm getting an error. And what's that error again that I'm getting? Let's try that again. I'm getting this error that says, so why do you think I'm getting this error? Let's look at the right-hand side here. What did I miss? So it says set text, right? And then set text, I got an equal operator. Look at this. And then I come up to assign. I'm assigning something, on line 47. This is where it's broken. On the label set text method. I'm trying to set the text label, right? And I'm casting it to string, right, as an example. And here's my tile cost, which is a cost on line 50. So this is where you can actually follow it here. When you have a break like this, you can follow it as well, right? So you can say, okay, well, what's my cost? My cost is 0. What? And it goes to my new text, which is here. And I have a new text, set text. This is what it does. And it's trying to set this big number, 0.000. What? Right? So let's go back out, fix this problem. So what I'm saying is, here's the tile cost, and I'm trying to set the cost, which is a floating point value. I'm converting it to a string, right? Set tile cost to a string. Okay. And of course, this is going to have a potential issue, right? Because I'm converting a cost to a string and it's too big and so on. And you're getting a massive value anyway, and there might be something I missed somewhere. But the value you're going to get is like really massive anyway. And this is not what we want, right? So here, let's do the following. Let's, instead of setting the cost value for a second, because we know where the error is, it's whenever I go to my placing.cpp and I do this, and then I set the tile cost of the distance. Let's just undo this change. And let's see if I can avoid the error, right? So let's see what that distance value is between the get transform. And okay, so that's not the issue. It's not the setting the error. It's something else. Cost is const. Okay. Yes, it could be the cost is const, right? But I'm not doing that. Okay. So you're saying the cost is const, but I'm not setting the cost here. So what could be the other problem? What if I just took, let's just back up, right? One thing, all this is doing is calculating the position of my target, transform position, and I'm just doing this part, right? I'm not saying the tile cost right now. I commented this out. So let's go to the next part. Let's just take away the offset for a second. So just to show, I always break it down like this. I'm saying, what could be the problem? My tile get transform position is the actual physical position in world space. All right, so what could be the problem? So let's try that now. Does it compute now with this way of doing things? No. What else could it be? Where else is it happening? Look at the call stack. Set tile costs, right, is what's happening. And before that, where is set tile cost happening, right? Set tile cost is happening in here. And you're saying take away the const, right? But it really doesn't matter, right? If I took away the cost, the const here, and I reran it, let's see if this is the thing. I'm not even calling set tile cost yet, and I'm getting an issue, all right? So let's see where that's happening, right? Why? I know why yours is working and mine's not, by the way. Because up here, I'm setting the tile cost to 0, 0. Right here, and instead of setting the tile cost to 0, which is what I do before I take this out, if I take this away, right, just for a sec, and I run it, because 0, 0 is the default anyway, then it should be okay, right? That's my error. But anyways, and we'll talk about why this is, because I'm doing this in the constructor, right? And I'm setting the tile cost and I'm trying to print to a label that doesn't exist. That's why, going back to what Neil said earlier, right? If the label doesn't exist, right, as an example, then how can you assign it? That's why it's just best sometimes to be simple and go something like m_cost, right? We want to set that to 0.0f. We want to initialize, but we can't set, if we're doing too many things at once, for example, in this case, if we set the tile cost, we're also setting up the label. The label doesn't exist yet in the constructor, and that's why this would fail. All right, So that's the problem. And now let's go back to that thing we were doing to show you what I got, which is as ugly as you would get. If I go back to this and set that up so you can see the cost, and let's put the offset back on because we just did our troubleshooting and we figured out what it was. And if I run this thing, you're going to see a terrible long value that looks horrendous when I look at this thing, right? If I look at this thing, it looks like this. That says, how do I see my call stack? It only shows up when it breaks. But if I go to immediate window or exception settings, this is where the call stack, if there's something that's broken, the call stack will show up with a bunch of stuff it's got a problem with. It shows you right here, right? Right now, everything's working great, so I'm not stopping, so it's not showing my call stack because nothing's wrong. But notice what it did. It did a terrible thing. It like literally broke the way it looks, right? So if I look at the grid, oh, wow, that's terrible. Let's format this thing a little bit. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go to set tile cost, which is in my tile.cpp. This is where I'm gonna do my formatting, right? And I'm gonna leave the distance first. The distance is wrong. But what I wanna do is I want to format, right, my string to 1 decimal place. That's what I wanna do. I wanna set up a standard string stream, right? My standard string stream doesn't exist. I'm gonna call it stream. What you need to make this work, the string stream, it says, hey, do you want to allocate something like include, look at this, it says include definition of standard basic string, which is number include string stream, S stream, which is what I want, okay? So I want to include the string stream up here, right? So it's going to look like this. Doesn't matter where it goes right now, but I'm probably going to put it underneath my tile. So that's an include, and it's going to be S stream. I know that I'm also going to use some kind of IO manipulation stuff, so I'm going to do that too. Include IO manip. Let's put that in. Those are 2 things that I need because I'm going to start using some precision. So that's why I'm going to put those in place. Nick says should be part of my set labels enabled function. Yeah, but let me just bear with me, Nick, while I show you what I'm talking about. So when I set the cost, when I set the tile cost, right, I want to get tile cost, set tile cost. I want to format it every single time I get a cost. I want to format it. So first I set up a string stream. And then after I set up a string stream, this is just from, basic algorithms. I can say that the stream, I want to pipe in a fixed number. I also want to make it so that it is set precision to 1. I want to set precision to 1 decimal place. And then I want to pipe in the cost value that I'm getting from here. We can make this const, okay, like we did before. And then what I want to say is, let's make this const, where I have a string, and I'm going to call it the cost string, which is equal to the stream converted to a C string. That's what this is. So this converts my stream, which is a stream variable, to a string. That's what it does. This takes my stream and converts it to a string. And then I'm going to take my string and pass it into this right here. So cost string. So I'm going to do a little bit of processing. That's what it does. So I get my cost, I process my cost, turn it into a string that's with a precision of it's going to turn it into this is going to turn it into, or process the cost and turn it into a string with a single precision, 1 significant digit, and it's going to output it to the string. That's what I'm doing here. So it'll reduce the precision, but we don't care about it being more precise than this when we output it. What we see on screen doesn't have to be more than 0.1, as an example. Let's see that, and let's see how that looks. So again, what does this look like when I do different precision? I can turn it on, and now it's a little better. But it's still huge. It's huge. Why? Because I'm looking at pixels, right? It's a pixel, right? So I can see that, look, way out here, it's 744 pixels away from the center of my object, 744 pixels away. It's nice from a world space perspective, but we're using a grid. Let's take advantage of the grid, right? So, and it can't divide by 10 because it's not by 10, it's by 20 on this side and 15 on this side. So it doesn't make any sense to do it this way. So nice idea. Yes, this is still going to remain the same. I like this set tile costs, but what we want to do is make a different calculation when it comes to my compute. So let's go back to my compute calculation, this part, compute tile costs. So here's something, instead of computing a tile cost, right, that is from a distance in pixels, I want to get the distance in tiles, the distance in tiles. Okay, I need another convenience function for this. I need another convenience function. So I'm going to go to my placing.h, and underneath my get tile, I want to, actually, what it should be is part of my my class, my target class. My target itself needs some way of holding the you know the tile itself, the tile position. That's what I need, right? I need the tile position, and I want to hold that tile position inside of my target, right? Because I don't want to do a terrible calculation and go back and figure out the tile, right? I don't want to do that. So this is something different. So let's go back into my target now. And under game objects, let's go into my target.h. Here's my target.h. I'm modifying my target a little bit because my target is a display object. And this is, again, this if I'm modifying my target, in your mind, you just think, is there another class that I can create? Maybe a navigation object, which inherits from display object, another abstraction that helps me do some calculations when it comes to the grid. And let's add in this information. I want to have a GLM vec2 object, right, that is going to hold something called my grid position. So it's going to be a position in X and Y coordinates. It's different than my global world position. Guys, hold on, I'm almost finished here. My global world position. I don't want to do my global world position, right? And I want to have a getter and setter for this. Let's do void. Again, we'll do the getter first. So GLM vec2, which is get grid position, right? And that's the first one. And then we'll do a void set grid position where we can set it. And we're going to pass in a float column and a float row. That's what I want. Okay, so column and row, let's make sure this happens. I'm going to store it here in my target. And maybe for every other navigation object, harkens again to an abstraction. We think about, in my mind, I'm thinking about another superclass that inherits from display object. So instead of it being final, I could inherit something from it, right? I can make something called a navigation object, which gives me some information about my grid, where I'm at, to help me, right? Cool, I like it. But let's start by making it work. So again, I'm going to go back to target, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go generate definitions by declarations, which is going to generate that stuff that I need. And inside here, it's very simple. All I'm going to do is in my get grid position, I'm going to return m underscore grid position. And which means, hey, resharper saying, make it const. Okay. And when I set it, I'm going to say, cool, I want to set the grid position. I'm going to say m underscore grid position, and it's going to be a new GLM vec2 object where I'm going to pass in the column and the row. Pretty simple. So I'm passing in column and row. Let's make these const, right, like it's suggesting. And I'm going to save my position on the grid, right, when I move my object, right? So when I move my object, it's going to have both things. So I'm going to have my grid position, and I'm going to have my world position. Okay. You're going to see where there's some optimizations. We're going to make optimizations next. All right, next we're going to make some optimizations. Nick says, aren't column and row ints? Yes, they are. But what if I want to calculate distance? Distance will be floats, so I'll lose some precision. So I'd rather have it be floats here, and then we can convert to ints. Floats to ints are okay. Ints to floats are, you lose a lot of precision, and it'll affect our pathing. But you're right. Okay, so this is fun. So this, once I've done this, my target now has the ability for me to set grid position, and then I can store it there and get grid position again. All right, so cool. Let's go back to my playscene.cpp, and way up where I'm in my start scene now, right? Way up in my start scene, we can do different things now, right? Well, we're already moving things around, right? When I set my target, I've already set my transform position plus an offset. It's as easy as doing something like this, m_p target, and I want to set grid position, right, to 1511. Now I've stored it. I've stored my grid position, 1511. I already have a mechanism from getting my grid position from my tile. I just did that already, right? But this set grid position is something I can do with my target. Remember, I need to do a distance check. I need two vectors, two vec2s, right? Okay, cool. So this is the first step. Second step is in my compute function. Let's go back to my compute function, which is down here again, way down here. So instead of computing the tile cost the way that I did them before, what I want to do now is compute it by grid position, And the way the grid position was working, it wouldn't work like this. I don't need an offset anymore because I don't care about world positions, right? And what it's going to look like is almost the same, except that this internal inside part is going to change. It's going to say, okay, m_p targets, right? And my target is going to get my grid position. Okay, that's the first part. My target's grid position. And then I need the grid position of my tile. My grid position of my tile. Oh, crap. I don't store my grid position of my tile anywhere, do I? Again, remember what I said? Duplication. Duplication says to you in your mind, there's something missing. There's something I can do differently than this. There's something I can do better than this. I can make a class. I'm not doing it today, but I can do a class because we're running out of time. So again, I'm going to go back to my target, and you know what? We already have the stuff in place. Let's just copy paste into my tile class. Do it, right? And I want to do this, right? Generate definitions by declarations. There's the definitions right in here. And then just like I did in my target.cpp, I literally want to copy everything that's in here inside there, right? But I need a grid position in my tile as well, because that's what I'm missing. I don't have a grid position in my tile, which we're going to add in as another GLM vec2. Guys, I'm duplicating. It should bother you greatly that I'm doing this. It bothers me just doing it, right? But it's good if it bothers you. If it bothers you, that means you know, yes, Nick, you're very bothered. I'm totally fine. I'm happy that you're bothered because that means that there's something we can do better than this. We can do better, which means we're going to do better the next time around, right? Because we're going to refactor after we make this work the way it should work, right? I'm just copy pasting. The same functions, right? Same functions. Exactly the same. Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. I know it's yucky, sorry, but we want to make it work. So going back to our little target, now I can do it finally, right? Now I can compare two grid positions where I can say, hey, tile, here's my tile. I can say get grid position. All right, but when do I ever set the grid position? Oh man, when do I set the grid position? Well, I set the grid position on creation, which is up here, right? So I can say something just underneath the get transform position. I can set the grid position, tile, right? Set grid position. They should bother you too. Why? Because I'm doing this. First, I'm setting the world position. Then I'm setting the tile position, the grid position. Okay, and you're like, so what? Look at the pattern, right? Look at the pattern. First, I set the world position, then I set the grid position. What does this mean? This can be combined into one somehow. This can be combined into one. I need to be able to do that, right? When I set the grid position, I set the world position. I want to be able to do both at the same time. So that's a special type of display object, like I said, a display object that is made for pathfinding, which is what we're missing. Okay, we're not going to do it today. We're going to fix it next day. Let's see what I get now when I compare distances. When I do my compute function, going back down to my compute tile costs, right? So Neil says, so make a subclass of display object. Yes, but we need to unlock the display object. Right now, the display object, the way I have it, Neil, if you look at core, the display object is okay. It's a public game object, right? That's what the display object is. But what we want to make sure that it's not final. We don't want the display object to be final, right? And what we have, if you look at the we want to make sure that this is something that I kind of inherit from display object, and I create another class. And the other class will be probably called something like navigation object or pathfinding object or something like that. Okay, let's run this thing and see what I got so far. And let's see what it looks like. So if everything goes well now, and I'll show everything in a second. If everything goes well now, then what we'll see is that when I press my grid, now we see this. And this is more like it. This is 1 tile away. This is 2 tiles away. This is 1.4 tiles away, right? This is 2.2 tiles away. So it's more reasonable. It's a number of tiles away from this object, which is way back to what we have. Let's go back to our couple things people want to see is our playscene.cpp, and we also want to see what happened here. We have a, could I just divided the number by 40? No, don't do it. Because what if tomorrow you have a different tile size, Ethan, 32 by 32 or 16 by 16, you want to make your code extensible. And you know what? This is a far better way of doing it. All right, so even if you divide it by tile size, this is we're gonna need to get access to the grid. We're gonna need to get access to it. All right, so let's go back to our the things that were asked for. So I want to go back to what you asked before, which is you want to see the playscene.cpp. Where do you want to see it? You said you wanted to see the breakpoint status label. Sorry, lots of comments here. Build grid. Okay, you want to see the build grid? That's inside of here. This is the only thing that's been changed. Stream part. The stream part is inside of my tile.cpp. I'll do a split screen for that. So I'll kind of do one of these where I can kind of do, one thing you can do with VS Code is, or Visual Studio is you can break it down into two sides like this. And what you want to see is this is what you're looking at right here, right? Okay, so you can see both. This is the string part. So stream, what it does, it creates a string, and then it sets the formatting. That's what it does. And this one is what it shows you. Okay, hopefully this is good for you. We'll put this back. And let's show the Solution Explorer again, just because I want to show that. And I also want to show my, my properties. I want to display those. There we go. Compute tile cost. Sure, let's do that. And then we'll finish off with moving it around for those people who can stick around. So compute tile costs, that is inside of my playscene.cpp. And that's it. That's my compute tile costs. You get an error in M grid position is equal to less than what here in U? Okay. I'll come back to that. Let me finish this off now before you guys run away. So now that I have my compute tile cost, this is fantastic, but I want to be able to move my stuff around in IMGUI, right? It's the last part. So this is, I've kind of done this part, and I've got this part done, and I just want to do this last part before you guys go. I know we're running overtime, but let's try and do this little part right here with I am GUI, and then we're done for the day. So that is up in here. And what it's going to look like with I am GUI is a couple of additional pieces of information. So what I want to do is I want to be able to move my object around the screen. And right now what I have is a checkbox that toggles the grid off and on, right? And what I want to do is I want to use a separator. So I am GUI separator. And what I want to do is I want to have a static object, which is an integer type. And it's going to be a the target position. All right, is what I want, right? And the target position is going to be an array, and it's going to equal to m_p target. And I want to get the get grid position. So only the grid position is what I want, right? And I want m_p target where I want to get the grid position on the y-axis. So that's what's going to hold inside of my little target position array, right? And then what I want is I want to use if I am GUI, and I'm going to say slider into. There's my slider into, and my slider into is going to say the target position, right? And I need a reference to the target position variable, undo, target position variable, which is right here, this one, okay? And also a min value and a max value. The min value is going to be 0, and the max value for now is going to be config, and it's going to be column number -1. Now you're going to say, wait, column number -1, what about the row? It's going to go off screen, it's going to cause an error. Yeah, we're going to arrange for this. And you're right. But for now, what we're going to do is m_p target. I'm going to say that I'm going to set the grid position to the target position, and m_p target, and it should be the target position dot, as an example, dot x or dot 0, the first target position, right? And target position 1, that is going to be my grid position, which makes sense because I'm getting it when I set the grid position in the UI. It's going to give me a 0 or 1 in here. And then what I want to do is I want to set m_p target. I want to set the world position, the transform, and I can do this in a different order. I did it in a different order last time. But I want to set the get transform position to equal to m_get tile. And I want to get the column position, so target position, again, 0, and the target position 1, which is going to give me that, right, as an example. So far, so good. Plus my offset, where I need an offset in here. And notice in I am GUI, I don't have an offset, which means I'm going to do this goddamn offset again, which is galime. I'm sorry, guys. But it's once I see this over and over again, it like irks me to, to crazy amounts. So I can put that up here for now, so we can remember. And I'm going to say, some kind of to do, we need to deal with this, right? Because this is like giving me crazy, right? And so what I want is my target position. I'm going to get my tile, right? As an example, whatever my tile is. And then what I want to do is wherever my tile is, I want to get transform, right? So this is my tile. And then get transform dot position, right? Plus my offset. Okay, that's what that's going to do. All right, so that's going to position everything properly. Let's put this in the right order. Usually we do, let's do world order first. This is my world position, and then followed by my grid position. That's what this is, okay? So that's the first part. And then as soon as I move it, I want to recompute my tile costs. m_compute tile costs again, because I moved it, I want to recompute. That's what I'm going to do. I have a finicky bug that I'm going to fix with SDL render clear, and I'm going to pass in the renderer. Remember I had that bug last day, and I'm going to pass in the getRenderer function. So it's going to clear the renderer whenever I do this kind of stuff. And then I'm going to use the SDL set render draw color, this one, that I'm going to put in the renderer. Sorry about this, but this is just a bug I got to fix, which is getRenderer. And I want to pass in 255, 255, 255, 255, which is my draw color, right? And then finally set SDL render presents with my renderer, which I'm just going to copy paste. So this is going to fix my problem when I move it around. Thank you. Take care, Dad. Yes, Ethan, define offset. I agree. That's definitely a way. Or we can put it in compute, or in config, or util, or someplace, or make a class. We're going to use later on. All right, so cool. So this is the way of doing this, and what this is going to do is make a slider that allows me to move my target around. Let's put this up on and make it run, and see what happens if I made an error or something else. So again, I want to show my target, and now I have these two things, but I have a problem. My problem is I can go out of range like this, right? And have an issue if I move my object out of range, which means I want to protect my I only have X number of rows I can go into. The rows is the Y offset, right? So I can say that if my column or my target position 1, the rows, if this is greater than the config dot row number -1, if it's greater than this, then I want to set it to this. So I'm going to take this whole thing again, because I never want to let it go. So this is kind of a hack, but it's going to work, right? So I'm saying, well, if it's greater than 14, I'm going to make it 14. This is just the row adjustment, right? So that way I make sure that it doesn't go beyond the number of rows. And if I run this now, I'm going to post to GitHub in a second. If I run it now, and if you notice, if I turn on the grid, you see that it's here. And if I move this, it automatically calculates the new position on the grid based on the distance from every other tile to where my my target is. So I can move it to the right, left, and if I move it beyond 14, it'll just flash and it'll go back to 14, which is okay for now because this is just a debug, right? So that's what I can do. I can recalculate everything based on where my target is, and it'll always stay inside. It'll snap to that grid. Okay, this is it. We've taken care of everything, guys. And so now let us go back to this. This is what it looks like. I'm going to put this up on GitHub, and we've done this part too, this last part. All right, let's put it up. So I'm going to say, again, and again, this is really long, and it really irks me that we did it this way, but we did it. We made it work. Next week, we're going to do some refactoring as we go to the next step. Okay, so up on Team Explorer, I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes, and I'm going to say, we did a couple things. We're able to display everything in my my tiles, right? And I'm also able to move my target and recalculate. So display tile cost complete with GUI support. Okay, so commit all, home, sync, and push. And that is what you need. You have everything you need. From a screenshot perspective, what I would do at the end, you're going to show your screenshots. You want to run the code, and you want to show a couple things. You want to show your grid that looks like this, right? And then you maybe want to show a couple of additional positions where this can change, right? Where I want to change my grid to a different position. You can see this. You may want to also take a screenshot. And by the way, it says lab 3, but it should say lab 4 in your GUI function. You can change this to lab 4. So I'll just update that too. Changes, changed I am GUI window. message, which is what I did. Commit all, and then home, sync, and push. So you want to show that. You probably want to show some of your code. You want to take some snapshots in some places too, because we've done a lot of coding today. And the README I did already, I think is probably up to date. Let's take a look. Maybe I didn't. You're probably right. So let's take a look at the docs for my README. It says lab 3. Let's say lab 4. It should say lab 4 for the README. Let's update that. So Team Explorer, home, changes. You know, it can say updated README file, right? Commit all, home, a little bit minor little things, sync, and push. And now we have everything you need to make this go. Okay, so a lot of little coding, but what it will do is make your life easier. It's a good step forward in terms of calculating each of your tiles, and you're computing the cost, and now you can take it to the next level. We did only Euclidean distance, and what we can do the next time is modify our compute function so that it allows the user to choose what type of computation you want to make per tile. Could you go back to the play scene for a moment? Sure, I can do that. And here's the play scene. Where do you want to look? Okay, for those people watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Good luck on your lab 4, and I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to stop recording. Okay, I'm in the